Kia ora, Jason. We're ready to take it away.
Thank you, Ruby. Kia ora koutou. Hello, everyone. Welcome to all of you who have joined us this evening for our webinar. This is our Kaipara District Council online presentation and Q&A session for our long-term plan, 24 to 27. Ko Jason Rouse toko ingoa, ko o Chief Executive ki te Kaunihira o Kaipara. I'm Jason. I'm the CE for Kaipara District Council. So welcome today. We are live this evening, beaming to you from our offices and in some cases our living rooms. Queue behind my look. So welcome everybody for joining us and thank you for joining us for today. Just the format for tonight's presentation is a quick overview of the long-term plan first, including the specific topics we're actually asking for feedback on. Following that, we'll do a Q&A session with the 3 elected members who are here this evening, and I'll introduce them in a sec, and myself. If you have any questions now or during today's session, please put them in the Facebook chat below the live stream and we'll go through them in the second part of this webinar. Now, before I kick off and get into it, I do want to introduce our elected members who are with us this evening. We have Deputy Mayor Jonathan Larson, who's a councillor for the Kaiwaka Mangawhai ward. Jonathan, say hi.
Hey, everyone.
Brilliant. We have Councillor Mike Howard, another councillor for the Kaiwaka Mangawhai ward. Mike.
Good evening, all.
And finally, but not least, we have Councillor Pera Paniora, a councillor for our Te Moana Nui o Kaipara Māori ward.
Kia ora koutou.
Thanks for joining us tonight, team. Ruby, can we, just one other thing, in the background, you won't see them, most likely, we have Tash and Ruby from our crew helping me tonight. So if we can just go to slide 2, Ruby, please. Okay, some important details. So consultation for our long-term plan opened up on the 4th of April. It closes at 1 minute to midnight this Saturday, the 4th of May. May the 4th be with you. We're asking for feedback on quite a few specific topics, but you can actually comment on anything that you would like to that relates to our proposed plans for the next 3 years. Really important for us. We're consulting on a few things. There are some policies, and I know they're not exciting to look at, but if you want to, you can. We're consulting on our revenue and financing policy, our financial contributions policy, rates remission and postponement policies, and our development contributions policy as well. They don't sound that important, but they actually are, and they're fundamental to what we do within council and how we fund our work. The other source documents that you might be interested in are the infrastructure strategy and the financial strategy. So the infrastructure strategy covers off all of our work at a high level in the infrastructure space for the next 30 years. So that's the sort of period of time that we are planning for here for you and the community. If you wish to make comments on them, you can include them on your submission form as well, and they can all be found on our long-term planning page on our website, which is kaipara.govt.nz/LTP. One other thing, we're also consulting on our fees and charges. Now, we do this every year. It's a little known fact by the number of submissions we get, but it's a really important aspect in that we don't only get funding from our rates. It's a user-pays service as well. So our fees and charges are really important, and the way we set them is out for consultation at the moment too. So that's also on our website, /have your say. All right, Rube, so let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to talk to you about what actually is a long-term plan. And this little picture in front of you tells you everything you need to know. A long-term plan, LTP is what we all call it, the acronym is, sets council's direction and work program for our years ahead. It outlines the services we will provide to the community, to you, and the projects that we will do for you and how we'll pay for them and how, importantly, we measure our performance as well. Now, LTPs are normally 10 years ahead. So that's our planning window, 10 years ahead. And we must review and consult with the community on it every 3 years. And that's the aspect we're with you at the moment. And that's the top of the diagram that you see in front of you. Now, we also have other documents that create in between it. So every 3 years we have an LTP. In between those years we have an annual plan, and that sets out the work program for that annual plan. And it also sets out differences between what we consulted on in the LTP, the long-term plan side of things. And one other key document that you'll see on that page as well is our annual report. Now that's backward facing, so that's looking in the rear vision mirror. And that tells you, our community, the projects we completed, how we did, our measures, and the progress we made on our work that was promised in the annual plan for that year. So that sort of gives you an idea of the planning framework. So we'll just hooch over to the next slide, please, Rube. Now, this long-term plan is a little different, though. Remember when I said it was 10 years? This time's not. You will all know in the community, as much as we do, that we suffered really massive, long-lasting damage to our critical infrastructure during the extreme weather events of 22 and 23, particularly to our roads and footpaths. Now, you'll all remember Cyclone Gabrielle, or the Mangawhai weather bomb, we like to call it. Well, I do. Cyclone Gabrielle was the most significant, but there were another 7 other rain events that caused damage to our infrastructure as well, and it's easy to forget about them. But with Cyclone Gabrielle, we had more than 120 slips and 104 individual roads were actually impacted, which is the highest on record for a single event in the Kaipara. Now, estimated costs to repair our local roading network are in the realm of $34 million. That's a humongous amount of money. So our roading teams have completed a huge amount of work already, or so completed a huge amount of work already, but we still have around 57 sites around the district that need repairs. The repairs needed for these sites are significant and complex. So these are the bigger sites that we need to work on and continue to do so. Because of these impacts, central government offered us a bit of a breather, actually, and we are one of the 8 councils in Aotearoa, New Zealand, who were able to adopt a 3-year plan with a focus on recovery. And so that's why our long-term plan is the 24 to 27 LTP this year. All right, Rubes, let's go to plan on a page. Look at this. So this is what you see here is an average breakdown of where we are proposing our rates go in the first year of our LTP. We're just focusing on the first year to give you an idea of what it looks like, okay? You can see here that roading is a significant portion of it. So for each $100 of rates, we plan to spend approximately $35.71 on roading. Now that's an increase on previous years, and that's partly down to the focus on recovery in this first year. We're also, though, having to absorb increasing costs to maintain our level of service, and I'll talk to that in a bit later on. Over the 3 years, our main focus is recovering from the extreme weather events, as I said, then getting on with clearing the backlog of work that has arisen as our recovery repairs took priority. So I'm sure you'll understand that. Roading remains our main priority and the main priority of this council as well. The key challenge is firstly to make sure there is provision to get our roads repaired and rehabilitated and maintain our levels of service. Basically, our infrastructure needs to be more resilient to withstand the types of extreme weather we're witnessing. So we're trying to provision in some areas for that now. Right, we're going to head over to what does this mean for my rates. Okay, so there it is on the screen in front of you. It looks horrific when you put it in black and white, but we're consulting on an average 15% average rates increase across the board after growth in the first year, followed by an average 8.4% in the second year and 3.4% in the third. Now, if you haven't had a chance to look yet, I recommend you do this. Go to our website, and on the long-term plan webpage, you will find a link to the rates calculator. This will show you the rates you currently pay for this financial year and the proposed rates for next financial year for your property. If you pay targeted rates on your property, you will see these as a line item as well as the rates recollect on behalf of NRC. Don't forget, when you get your rates letter, when it comes out to you, there is a portion of that is the Northern Regional Council rates as well. Now, there are a number of factors that affect your rates. How much your rates are depends on a number of things, and they're kind of listed below there. Now, your property value is a big one. If you have a high value property, then your general rates portion of your invoice will be higher than someone who has a low property value. Makes a lot of sense. Property type, for example, residential, commercial, industrial, or forestry, and where you live and the services your property is rated for, and targeted rates comes into that conversation to explain that as well. A really important factor to take into account this year is the independent revaluations that have recently occurred. So they were done by QV, an independent company, early this year. Now, QV compares your property with recent sales in an area to determine a property value. If your land value goes up as a result of the revaluation, it does not necessarily mean your rates will go up accordingly. It depends on how much your land values change compared with other people in the district. If you kind of think of the council's rates as a pie, it's called a big pie, the size of the pie does not get any bigger because of the revaluation. However, your slice of the pie and amount you pay in general rates may get bigger or smaller depending on how your property value has changed in relation to the average change for the district. So I've heard a lot from people in our district recently with the revaluations. It's an interesting concept because many properties have increased considerably in value. And so on paper, that's good for people, but it's only good for people if they sell. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Rubes, and we're talking about what's driving the rates increases. So as you saw, we are consulting on a 15% average rates increase across the board after growth in our first year. Okay, that is an additional $7.4 million of rates we're proposing to levy. Now, really acknowledge that the proposed rates increase for our first year of this LTP is a considerable amount of money and affects every one of you. As the Mayor has said previously, during the long-term plan consultation process and all the way up to adoption of the LTP, which will be in late July this year, elected members and staff are continuing to investigate ways we can make further inroads to reduce our costs. That's been a key driver for our elected members, and in fact, we had a briefing today on that as well, and we're still working really hard with our elected members to try and reduce that rates increase for you. So our increased focus on roading, that obviously includes operations, maintenance, renewals, improvements, and recovery from the cyclones, makes up more than half of this total average rates increase for the first year. So even before this year, and actually in our informal engagement on the LTP, most of the feedback from people in our community is fix our roads, guys. Let's get the roads right. So that's where the focus has been. So the increase in part reflects the higher costs that councils are dealing with across the board here. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples of that. Whenever we do any work on our bridges now, they're up 38% higher than they were 3 years ago. So we've got 351 bridges in our district that we've got to look after. It's a significant increase in cost, right? Water supply and roading is increased by 27%. Wastewater systems, 30% more expensive to build than they were 3 years ago. And in some cases, we're seeing project costs up to 50% higher than 3 years ago. So there is a lot going on here, and post-COVID inflation and interest rate hikes are two major contributing factors to these costs. So the amount of general rates that we're proposing to fund our roading activity in year one of the LTP is 40% higher than the current year. If we were to spend, I don't know, the same that we have for the last 3 years, we would actually see a decreasing level of service each year and an increase in failing assets over time. Now remember, we're over $1 billion worth of assets in our district now. We have to spend more money even if we want to maintain current road quality. So we've allowed for some increased levels of service in this space so that once we complete recovery repairs and get back on track, we have provision for increased resilience across the network to reflect the feedback that all of you have been giving us. All right, let's go to the next slide, Ruby. We're nearly there, and then you get to stop listening to me and I'll hand over to our elected members. But that was basically an overview of the general picture for the next 3 years for the Kaipara district, okay? So we've told you where the planned spend is, what the main focuses and priorities are, and what the projected rates increases are. The proposals outlined in the consultation document and source document reflect the focus on our recovery and resilience and the challenging environment the council is working in. However, we recognise that you may have other views or ideas about what we should be doing and how should we be doing it. So there is nothing set in stone. It's called a consultation document for a reason. It's out there in the public arena. We're asking for your feedback and we would dearly love to get it. We have to date, and it's Wednesday night, we have over 300 submissions already, and it's a fantastic amount of feedback from our community. Traditionally, the community doesn't speak up very well in long-term planning consultation aspects, so really pleased to get that. I encourage you to continue to give us their feedback so we can have that conversation with our council. Now, what we're going to do now is talk about the specific topics we're seeking feedback on. And I'm going to, we've got a tag team of elected members ready to go. And the first one who I'm going to hand over to is Councillor Paniora. So, Pera, over to you to talk about the community hubs.
Thanks, Jason, for the clear overview of our proposed long-term plan. Topic 1 is all about community hubs. The previous council agreed to build community hubs in both Dargaville and Mangawhai through the Better Off funding package provided by central government. This was sufficient to carry out pre-construction phase for both community hubs, including community engagement, design development, detailed designs, as well as consenting and site works. The previous council agreed, following community consultation as part of the last long-term plan, to develop a new building adjacent to the Northern Wairoa War Memorial Hall and Municipal Building to house a Dargaville community hub that would include a library. However, in Mangawhai, we do not currently have a confirmed location for the community hub. In addition to this, council is not in a position to purchase land in the next 3 years. And so the only viable option at this stage is to build it on council-owned land. The plan is for both community hubs to include library services. And aside from library services, the community hubs could house a number of different facilities and functions, including digital facilities, meeting rooms, or a multi-purpose flexible space that could be used for events, activities, and learning, as well as a range of community support and other services. So we're asking, what other potential services you think are important to have in these hubs so that we can start to develop and plan the design? I will now hand you over to Deputy Mayor Jonathan Larson.
Thanks, Pera. Yeah, so I'm going to just talk about Urlich Park. Mangawhai is growing rapidly. In September 22, Council agreed to purchase a 5.8 hectare block of land in the village on Moya Street for future sports and recreational facilities using reserve contributions. And reserve contributions are funds that are collected from developers or property owners who are subdividing their land and can only be primarily used in their catchment area to purchase or upgrade open spaces, in this case from the Mangawhai area. The land council purchased is located on Moya Street across the road from the Mangawhai domain and within walking distance to Mangawhai Beach School and the village shops. Right now, the land is bare, grassy farmland. It has no buildings or facilities and is being grazed by a local farmer. The grazing lease will expire in the next 2 years. So we are asking for your thoughts and feedback as to what sports and recreational facilities you would like to see used here. I'll hand over to Councillor Mike Howard.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, and good evening all again. Climate resilience and adaptation program is my first subject. It is the third subject for the evening. We're asking for feedback on whether it is or not whether or not the council should be funding a dedicated climate resilience and adaptation program. Last year, council voted to pause the Ruawai Adapted Pathways program, the emissions accounting and work on the climate smart policy. Council already follows some pretty strict legislation, and some of that legislation includes considering climate resilience in the work that we already do. For example, with the roads that we build, the roads and the design, the infrastructure we build, including stop banks, and the services that we do provide. We collect a targeted rate for the Raupo drainage area, which funds things like the maintaining of drains, the outlets with weed spraying and machine cleaning, and if necessary, replacing floodgates. And only today, coming back from Dargaville, we saw work on stop banks happening as we passed. Climate resilience is also considered as we develop our new district plan and the revised engineering standards that we have to work to. This is just some of the work we already do and will continue to do, irrespective of any dedicated climate resilience program. So what are we asking? What are we seeking? There are 3 options for this target that we're seeking your inputs on. For the next 3 years, Council's preferred option is not to spend any ratepayers' money on dedicated climate resilience program, which is why we have not yet included any funding for in one of the draft budgets 2024-27. The other two options are for varying levels of work and corresponding funding. For instance, point 2, planning for climate adaptation, $500,000 across 24-27 applied to general rates. That's just over 1%. Point 3, planning for climate adaptation and mitigation at $700,000 across 2024-27 applied to general rates. So that's that from me. Over back to Councillor Paniora.
Thank you. So topic 4 is all about the differential targeted rates for parks and libraries. We're asking for feedback on whether we should change the way we rate our district's parks and libraries. Currently, the cost to look after the district's parks and libraries is paid for through the general rates part of your rates bill. Because the general rates portion of our rates invoice is based on the land value, this means that those with higher land value like farms or large lifestyle properties contribute more to maintain and operate parks and libraries than those predominantly residential properties with lower land value. For example, some rural properties may currently pay over $700 for parks and libraries compared with some residential properties that live closer to the facilities and may pay less than 50% as examples. Would you like us to change the way we rate so that properties that are closer to facilities and that are not commercial or industrial pay more of the costs associated with maintaining and operating our parks and libraries? This change would mean that rural properties pay much less. So on slide 14, you will see that in the consultation document, we've offered 2 options that we are seeking feedback on. Now, the first option is a differential targeted rate where properties will be charged one of 2 fixed amounts. Properties that are within the defined role areas for Dargaville, Mangawhai, Mangaturoto, Paparo and Kaiwaka, excluding commercial and industrial properties, will be charged 60% of the budget. This works out to be approximately $415 for the 2024 to 2025 rating period. All other properties across the district, including commercial and industrial properties within the identified role areas, will be rated for 40% of the budget for parks and libraries. That works out at approximately $168 per property for the 2024 to 2025 rating period. Now, every property charged a uniform annual general charge would be levied one of the new targeted rates. You can look at the map in the consultation document and check online using the rates calculator to calculate which rate your property would pay. Now, the second option is to remain as we are or keep the status quo. This means continuing to pay for the operation and maintenance of parks and libraries through the general rate. What do you think? What might have, you might have other ideas. The budget for the maintenance and operation of parks and libraries across the district is $12 million across the 3 years. This is approximately $10 million for parks and $2 million for libraries. The cost of maintaining and operating the parks and libraries remains the same. It's the way we allocate the payment, which is what is proposed to be changed. Speak up for Kaipara and let us know. I will now hand you back over to Councillor Larson to talk you through the next one.
Thanks, Pera. The next question is a proposed rate that council would collect on behalf of another organisation. And in 2023, representatives for the Mangawhai Museum approached council for a targeted rate to assist in the ongoing funding of the museum, including the Daring Discovery Centre. Without a regular and certain income to supplement its other sources of income, the museum has advised council that its long-term future is uncertain. Without a regular and certain income, we want to hear from you as to whether or not you would like us to collect the targeted rate on behalf of Mangawhai Museum. And so we're asking, do we, one, collect a targeted rate of $20 per year from those properties in the Mangawhai Harbour Restoration targeted rate area? Or number two, stick with the status quo and don't collect a targeted rate. This means that Mangawhai Museum would have to look elsewhere for funding. Over to you, Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Councillor Larson. My next subject is another targeted rate, the Dargaville Sportsville. Like the Mangawhai Museum proposed rate, this rate is also one that Council would collect on behalf of another organisation. In November 2023, representatives from Kauri Coast Recreational Society Incorporated presented to Council and requested that a targeted rate be introduced to support the operating and maintenance costs of the established Sportsville Dargaville, and in collaboration between the Northern Wairua Rugby Union, NWRU, to provide a sustainable sports hub accommodating both indoor and outdoor multi-sport codes together with community and cultural event space. KCRS, the Kauri Coast Recreational Society, advised Council that the targeted rate for Sportsville Dargaville would ensure the sustainability of the facility in the long term and provide for the larger maintenance items that occur around the 10th year anniversary of building and courts and beyond. So we seek your guidance as to, do we, one, introduce a targeted rate for stage one operating expenses, calculated and presented to you at $9.78 per year? Or two, introduce a targeted rate for stage one operating expenses and future development at $21.28 per year? Or three, stick with the status quo and do not collect a targeted rate? We're in your hands. And with that, over to Councillor Paniora again.
Thank you. So for topic 7, we're talking about the targeted rate for forestry. So for this question, Council is seeking feedback only from those who are proposed to pay the forestry roading targeted rate. Council charges a targeted rate to properties growing exotic trees. All properties that are used to grow exotic trees under category FE within the district are charged the rate, which includes forestry blocks associated with carbon credits. The rate partially funds maintenance for roads impacted by logging trucks and other heavy vehicles associated with forestry activity to maintain current roading standards. Currently, the forestry roading targeted rate is calculated based on land value. Over the years, some ratepayers paying the forestry road targeted rate have approached Council to express their concern about the rate and the way it has been levied. We are considering whether or not the forestry roading targeted rate should be charged on hectares instead. Do we, one, change the way forestry roading targeted rates are calculated so that it is based on hectares rather than land value, or two, stick with the status quo and continue to calculate the forestry roading targeted rates on land value? This last one is for you, Councillor Larson.
Thanks, Councillor Paniora. So this next topic is about the targeted rate for the Raupo A and Raupo B drainage districts. And for this question, Council is seeking feedback from those who pay the Raupo A or Raupo B targeted rates. All landowners located within the Raupo land drainage scheme area currently pay a targeted rate. The targeted rate is used to maintain the Raupo land drainage scheme. This includes drains and outlet maintenance by weed spraying and machine cleaning maintenance, and if necessary, replacing floodgates. There are 3 different categories of the Raupo district targeted rate: Raupo A, Raupo B, and Raupo Township. 5 landowners in the Raupo district B targeted rate area have requested a review as they pay both the Raupo District A and Raupo District B rates. 271 ratepayers, including the 5 who contribute to Raupo B, contribute towards the Raupo District A rate. The request to remove the 2 differential categories and combine A and B has been discussed by the Raupo Drainage District Committee, which supports the change. So we have included the change in the draft modelling for the long-term plan budgets, and we're asking you, do we, 1, remove differential for Raupo A and B rate, or 2, stick with the status quo and continue to charge 2 separate rates? And now, back to you, Mr. Maris.
Thank you very much, councillors, Peter Paniora, Mike Howard, and Deputy Mayor Jonathan Larson. Really appreciate your time explaining that to you. So what we've done, team, is we've gone over the overview. We've given you summaries of the specific questions that we're asking for feedback on. Don't forget, 1 minute before midnight on May the 4th, Saturday, the Saturday coming. Now, this part of the webinar is all about answering your questions, as a matter of fact. So lovely Ruby and Tash have been monitoring Facebook and looking for your questions, and they'll put them in the chat for us so that we can start answering them. Here we go. So I'll just have a look and see what the story is. Here we go. So I'll read it out. So who are QV and how do they figure out the value of your property? So that's a really good question and quite topical, obviously, as I mentioned in the intro. So QV is quotable value is the name, and they're our valuation service provider actually for Kaipara District Council, and they do a lot of work across New Zealand. There's a couple of providers around New Zealand that do it. They do Auckland as well, I understand. They work independently of council, so we have no say over how they do their work and what they do. Rating valuations are based on what a property is likely to sell for at the effective valuation date, which is 1st of September 23. Okay, so 1st of September last year. Now, QV are guided by the market. They look at market evidence, so what property prices, what properties have sold for, and the prices they receive for them, and they kind of draw comparisons to similar properties to assess value in the district. One interesting thing that has caused some angst in our community, if I'm honest, is about the private plan changes. Now, we have about 4 private plan changes on the go at the moment. QV do take those private plan changes, applications at least, into account, and they do make an impact on your valuation as a result of those, even if the private plan changes are not fully approved yet. If they are fully approved, they go up a certain higher value again. Now, believe it or not, it's audited. Everything's audited in the world, and there's an officer of the Valuer General, so the OVG is the auditor, and approves and audits the QV work before the valuations are released. Now, they were released, I believe, in January this year as well, and you had we all had something like, I'm going to say 6 weeks. I'm not sure if it's correct. I'll say something like that to lodge an objection to the valuations. Okay, so that's the answer to that one. Hope I did my best there. Let's see. I can see in the consultation document you break down spend into capital and operating expenditure. I don't know what that means. What's the difference between the two? Okay, that's cool. Really good question. So it's probably how to best describe it. It's probably best to talk about a household here. So when we talk about capital works or capital expenditure, that gets even shortened to CapEx as well. It means doing things like renovations, adding a new bathroom, for example, in your house, concreting a driveway, or buying a new car. So capital expenditure, big ticket items that create assets, I suppose. For council capital works or projects, they're things like Potor Wharf, as an example, a new stop bank or a new road or a wastewater treatment plant. That's what we talk about as far as big ticket capital expenditure. Now, There are complications to that, depreciation and fixed asset registers and all that sort of stuff that I'm not going to go into and bore you to death with. Now, when we talk about operating expenditure, we mean, when you go buy your groceries, right? Your twice weekly bottle of milk or grocery shopping or your power bill every month, that's an operating expenditure for your house. And for council operating expenditure, it's the costs of fixing an existing pipe. So your pipe bursts on the road, under the road, sorry. Fixing that, repairing potholes, clearing drains, mowing our parks, that sort of thing. That's what you call OPEX, operating expenditure. So that's how we break down our costs when you see that in the consultation document. Just going to see if there's any more questions to talk to. Bear with me for a little second.
Jason, I've just put a couple more in the chat that came through prior to the talk.
Lovely. Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to hand to one of our elected members and give them the opportunity to talk here. So it's going to be like a quick fire buzzer round, right? So I'll ask the question and first in, first served, team. So why is there such a significant rates increase in our first year? Ready for a buzzer? Do I have a buzzer?
I'll start with that one. Look, the big issue is, and Jason started the webinar by talking about the damage and the costs of the damage from Cyclone Gabriel and the Mangawhai weather bomb. And really, the biggest issue still comes back to the costs of repair that we have to go to, and that is what we've made a focus. So there is still an awful lot of roading. I think that Jason mentioned 57 projects. There is stormwater, all sorts of repairs. So that is a priority, and that is a one-off, essentially a one-off event, is the basis for a lot of our additional incremental costs that we have to bear.
Thanks, Mike. Well done. I didn't hear your buzzer sound. You could have gone like Howard and answer the question, but no. Look, there's just another question here too, I believe. Oh, this is hard to see. So I'm sorry, team, as I try and work this through. There is actually a question regarding Three Waters and what are the impacts of Three Waters on our LTP. And so I'll probably briefly talk to that for a sec, if I could. So you'll recall towards the end of last year after the elections, Three Waters was going to be done by Entity A, in these mega entities type thing, which was Auckland North. Then the new government came in and changed the rules here a little bit and said that councils, in December last year, we were advised that councils would be responsible for the Three Waters again. So we went from a planning environment without Three Waters to a planning environment with Three Waters back in the fold. Now, that had some significant impacts for Kaipa District Council. $44 million of our $54 million debt at the time is related to waters infrastructure. Okay, so and we use debt, and debt's important to note here. We use debt to fund our infrastructure because it provides that intergenerational equity. So it means that this group of ratepayers, for example, this year, are not paying for future ratepayers' work. It's about sharing the cost across generations, and that's what debt allows to happen. So we were planning on not having that debt because that would have been part of Entity A. And then we've got considerable growth in our district. Now, Mangawhai particularly is the fastest growing seaside settlement in New Zealand, and growth is considerable there. And we need to accommodate that growth and obviously the wastewater treatment plant as well, and make sure we have sufficient connections for that growth. But equally so, over in Dargaville, there are two plan changes over there as well. So growth is starting to happen there too. And we have an issue with Dargaville's resilience, water resilience, and we've heard that long and hard from our community over there as well. So, there's a lot going on in this Three Waters space. Now, with Entity A, when you had economies of scale and a large group of people to sort of balance that load and that investment and the ability to get cheaper investment, we were forecasting at least $500 to $600 million worth of work required over the next 10 years. Now, we've had to scale that back considerably because we only have 18,800 rate plan properties in the Kaipara district. So we've had to really scale that back down, and we're just doing what we can do over the next couple of years while the government works with us and we work with the other councils on how we can deliver the Three Waters work. So in summary, I suppose to answer your question, the debt is, the Three Waters debt is back with us. We've got to accommodate growth, and we've got to try and do that at the same time as we're recovering from the storm events and trying to keep it as affordable as we possibly can, plus in an inflationary environment. That is the answer there. Ruby, do we have any more questions there at all?
There's one more there in the chat, Jason, that
Lovely,
came through
thank
from
you.
before the talk started.
Okay. There is lots of talk of this one of Dargaville and Mangawhai. What about the towns in between? Am I going to throw it to a buzzer? Do I hear a buzzer around?
I'm happy to talk to that one. Thanks, Mr. Maris. Yeah, it's really a good question, and it's a topic that I think about a lot as I drive backwards and forwards across the district to meetings. And I think it is something that we need to draw our focus to, is making sure that our smaller towns and settlements aren't neglected. And I guess the main point is our biggest spend is roading, and that applies across the whole district, along with our maintenance renewals and the cyclone recovery work going across the whole network. And this includes, Pahi, Tinapai, Whangaroto, Ruawai, as well as Dargaville and Mangawhai and other places in between. There's significant spend for our open spaces and facilities like our parks and playgrounds and reserves district-wide. And council does have some specific projects that are proposed to be undertaken, including Tinapai Wharf renewal. We've got new toilets at Aranga, Kaiwaka, footpath improvements. And these aren't projects directly funded from rates, but things like depreciation reserves, financial contributions and debt. But as far as the long-term plan consultation is concerned, it's really important for us to hear from everybody in all of the towns and settlements and small areas across our whole district about what you want to see in your area, what your aspirations are for your town. Because the more we know about that, the more consideration we can give to those ideas going forward and improving the district for everybody.
If I may, could I just add another comment on that? I think that Jason has very aptly covered that we look really hard at what paid projects, capital and operational, that are required and needed in smaller towns between the two big ones. But it's not all just related to money. And I'll give you an example about Kaiwaka. Now, some of us have been working enthusiastically with the groups in Kaiwaka to actually work with that community, and the community will drive it, and with growing enthusiasm, to create a sense of purpose, of pride, of involvement, engagement, and economic development through a concept we've sort of nominally named as Kaiwaka, the Tirau of the North. Now, it won't be that long before the only town north of Tirau that State Highway 1 actually goes straight through and doesn't bypass will be Kaiwaka. Sure, there are others at the moment. So we're working with 2 or 3 different groups in Kaiwaka and building their enthusiasm and engagement to generate their own economic development. And so it's a support infrastructure, I guess, that we can enthusiastically provide from a council point of view. And I think that that's just another dimension of how we can work with communities and I can tell you from a meeting yesterday, it was very, very positively received. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And it would be only fair of me to ask Peter Paniora if she wanted to add something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the beauty of the consultation document is to provide us with different ideas that we might be able to implement in council. However, unfortunately, you'll see from the rates increases that a lot of what we're going to be doing over the next couple of years is battening down the hatches and just really focusing on maintaining those current levels. And so Jonathan's talked about, that being roading and infrastructure, the three waters coming back in. And so that's what our key focus is. So yeah, everyone's getting nothing in terms of presence or what have you, unless it's coming from external funding, central government, this $1.2 billion regional infrastructure fund that's been announced. So provide us with some really good ideas in the consultation document, and then we may be able to advocate for them through the Regional Infrastructure Fund, or PGF 2.0 as we're calling it. Thank you.
Thank you, ngā mihi nui, Peter. Okay, team, so we don't have any further questions here, so I'll start the wrap-up process. I'm going to say a couple of things if I could. And Peter, just to follow on from your conversation, external funding, that's a key aspect for Kaipara District Council. In the previous LTP period, obviously PGF 1.0, if you want to call it that, was used quite extensively by us to get as much funding from the government as we possibly can. As far as the storm events go as well, and the increase in stop banks, we've been quite successful in attracting significant government funding also in the space. Now, that's really important for us with such a small district because, like I said to you before, we only have 18,800 rate-paying properties. We can't shoulder that cost all by ourselves, and we need support to do that. And it's my mission and the team's mission to try and attract as much government funding as we possibly can to do that. I wanted to talk to you briefly too about, obviously I've sort of highlighted to you all today the tough environment that local government is at the moment, and this, Kaipara District Council is not alone here. All the councils across New Zealand, if you've been watching the media and reading like the New Zealand Herald Online or whatever, are in the same position. Okay, a lot of rates, most councils' rates increases for this LTP are between 15 and 25. Some are up at 40%. So, it's a tough environment at the moment for all the reasons I outlined. I'm not going to go back into that again to you, but I would say that makes it tough for everybody, including our ratepayers and you out there. But I said also that the council and elected members are working really, really hard here with our team, and we're trying our best to reduce the rates increased as much as we possibly can. If you want to sort of get a bit of a summary of what we've done since the consultation's gone out, the consultation document's gone out, have a look at the council briefing that was held today online. Sorry, I was online, council briefing today. There's some information there about what we're trying to do to reduce the rates increase too. So I would encourage you to have a look at that. Most important thing though, obviously, is to tell us what you think and have your say for the future of the Kaipara. So please make sure you do that. Again, one last time, 1 minute to midnight on Saturday, May the 4th is when our consultation closes. So please have your say on that. And of course, the next steps for this process is if you indicate that you want to talk to the council, you will be able to present to all elected members at a hearing. It's usually 5 minutes to state your case and 5 minutes for questions, obviously, and you'll be able to present in front of the elected members. Now, they're not ogres, they're lovely people. They want to hear from you, so please, if you want to, come and talk to them. Following that, we and the staff will go through a process and we report back to their council with some options and therefore decision making, and then we build into the actual final LTP, which is scheduled for adoption at the end of July this year. So that's kind of what the next steps are moving forward. I suppose just wrap us up by saying thank you so much to the Deputy Mayor Jonathan Larson, Councillor Mike Howard and Councillor Peter Paniora for your efforts tonight, but also for the staff with Ruby and Tash working hard in the background to make this happen. Appreciate your help as well. And I suppose just I'll wrap us up there and just hand over to elected members if anybody wants to have some final sort of thoughts. I'll start with you, Jonathan.
Oh, thanks very much, Jason. Yeah, it's a really challenging time for all councils, but we've got big costs and inflation, and we have to be really careful that we balance that with people's ability to pay. And so, we've started off with really big budget and percentage rate increase figures over the last many months. We've been working to bring those down and down, and I think a number of us, and I'm included, aren't satisfied with the level that we've gone out with, but we have to start somewhere, and so that's why we're seeking your input. We want to find a place where we provide you with adequate services for the council and the local communities, but do that as best as we can in a way that's affordable for people as well. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm handing over to you, Pera Paniora.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, just one point that I wanted to make was in terms of the increases that we're seeing in our rates, another big blow to the Dargaville community will be those targeted rates. So I'm expecting and hoping to see a lot of submissions around the targeted rates and whether Dargaville wants to have those or whether they want to keep the status as it is, which will keep the rates at a lower level. And then lastly, but not least, I wanted to take my hat off to Jason Maris, the CEO, sitting here tonight at 5 minutes to 8 p.m. with COVID. So, thank you so much for being here. Obviously, you should be in bed, doctor's orders, but no, yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Kia ora, Pera. Much appreciated, eh? And over to you, Mr. Howard.
Thank you, and here, Pera. Look, as a first-time elected member, this has been a real challenge. Going through this and seeing the issues put to us and knowing the pressures on our community. I think there's one thing. I can't tell you how much we have been through line by line, item by item, to see if there is room and anywhere to chop so that, we can sustain services. It's even difficult to just blithely chop stuff and you don't know what the repercussions are. Excuse me. And we have seen instances of where expenditures have been delayed in the past and now impact us and you, the community, by upwards of 50% simply because of cost increases and things not going ahead in a previous time. So, there is a push me, pull you side to this, and we just have to be, and I can assure you that we are cognizant as much as we can be of the issues facing our community, but the need to keep a balance and to keep our district moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, team. I really appreciate the conversation there. All right, that wraps us up. I've thanked everybody except the most important people. Can I thank all you people in the community watching this or who will watch this later? Really appreciate the time and effort that you've made to come along and listen to us and obviously hopefully understand the process and where we're at a lot more as well. So just finally, kia pai tō koutou pō. Have a great evening tonight, everybody, and thank you very much for watching. Take it easy, matiwa.
Thank you.
Thank you.